Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. If you like any of these books, I hate you, I hate your mother, I hate your father, I hate your unborn child, and your dead grandmother. This video is me having my cake and eating it too, because I'm a bit ambidextrous on spreading hate. I don't know, I'm split. I think there's a fine line. There was, I think, a Supreme Court justice, it's like pornography or whatever. The Supreme Court justice said, I know it when I see it. And that's kind of how I feel about making a video that is based upon trashing on a book, or in this case, many books. I don't know, some versions of hate are not tasteful, but if they're within the course of your regularly conducted duties as a famous YouTuber who talks about books, I think it's okay. But you know it when you see it. So I actually didn't have to decide if this video was okay because I'm getting rid of these books. I've read these books. I used to keep every book I owned, and a while ago I got really tired of owning so many books, and so this is the first in a series of videos of me getting rid of my books that is partially parsed up into different videos. Clickbait, gotcha. I'm a superstar, but mainly because there are too many books, hundreds of books I pulled, and I thought, let me divide them up into books I've read and books I haven't. And then when I did that division, I realized that if I've read a book and I'm getting rid of it, chances are I didn't enjoy it, and more than that I probably really didn't enjoy it. So that's what this video is. I don't have a Goodreads, so there's not a shelf where I can just shelve all the books I've hated and move on with my life. Also, books are kind of like Horcruxes in that they house your soul the time you read those books, and so the actual physical object carries memories that I don't know, I'm a little bit sad, not really because I hated these books, but a little bit sad to get rid of. So making this video, holding the books up, I'll be like, oh, if I ever want to watch my videos, but if I ever do want to, it'll be here, and I can be like, oh wow, there's that physical copy that I hated. Let's get into the books. Oh, another thing, I thought about including books that I didn't particularly enjoy that I am getting rid of, but that are very popular books, e.g. Madeline Miller books, but I thought that would be dishonest and not in the spirit of this video, which is, these are truly books that I hated, that I really did not enjoy. They're not just ones that I was like, oh, clickbait, gotcha. I really didn't like these books. So, kicking it off with a book I actually don't even own. I checked it out from the library. That book is, and I wrote it on a post-it note. These books have been sitting in a bag for quite some time now. But I wrote it so I wouldn't forget it because I truly hate this book, and that is, can you read it, you dumb doggy? The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. What a terrible book. I'm not going in depth. I heavily disagreed with the values that are put forth in that book. If you want I don't remember how long rant though, but a sizable one. It is included in my video. I read Margot Robbie's favorite books. I hated that book. I really hated that book. And thank God I don't own it. But if I ever did want to, it is at 99% of thrift stores I've ever been to, which is a testament to how terrible that book is. Oh, if this video had a theme, I'm looking at the books, people are gonna get mad. People are already mad. But if this video had a theme, it would be The Road to Hell is Paved with Good Intentions. Most of these books have very good intentions. They're trying to do something. And for some people, they do it. For me, like The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, good intentions. Terrible book. Terrible book. The next book, Lord have mercy, is Crying in H Mart. Oh, I can't even read. Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I was so excited to read this book when it came out. Cover's awesome. I loved the hook, food and sadness. I love both of those things. But apart from the opening paragraph, which is something like, when I smell H Mart, I think of my dead mom, a banger line. Ever since my mom died, I cry in H Mart. But apart from that opening paragraph, really just the first page, I really kind of hated this book. And it felt very self-indulgent because everybody dies. And most people die in a very ignoble manner. I have sympathy, of course, but Michelle Zauner's mother is not special, and she is not special. And because that's the case, I expected something perceptive, some cutting analysis or great writing or whatever, but it was really just boring and self-indulgent. I remember the part with the maid and Michelle Zauner's like trying to do stuff for her mother, and it's like, why don't you just back up? You're like making things worse for your sake, not for your mother's. It was giving brat and not positive connotation. The one thing that I did think about for years after reading this was the mom telling Michelle to always hold 10% of herself for herself. And I think Michelle responds something like, but what about with dad? And she says, even him too. And I think about that a lot. Overall, really not great book, even hype aside. Hype included, terrible book. Next book, The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. Just looking at his face on the back makes me want to hit him. I thought this book was not well written, similarly self-indulgent and boring and offensive and cringy. No point to this book. There's no actual redemption arc. What happens in this book, spoiler alert, is that his friend gets raped repeatedly while he stands and does nothing and watches, and I think enables it, makes it worse. I don't know. It was really, really disgusting, and there's no redemption to that. The redemption is pathetic, truly pathetic. It's been years since I've read most of these books, so I don't remember what. This isn't a takedown. I don't like to dwell on hate. I like to keep it moving. There's no great message. The characters, insufferable. What I'm trying to say is that it's just trauma pandering. I thought it was cool for drawing awareness to the Afghanistan crisis for me, but that's absolutely no redeeming quality of the book. That's just of my ignorance that I didn't know was going on. Wikipedia could have done the same and more for me. Terrible book. A terrible book. And everybody loves this book. Be for real. Next book. I thought this would be one of, again, I had high expectations for most of these books. Thought it would be one of the best books I read ever. A favorite book. And I don't know why. Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. Wow, what a truly, truly terrible book. Not great writing, annoying, self-indulgent, and it's touted as like a Shakespeare retelling, or like, oh, it like gives the real what was happening with his wife and child, but it's completely made up. It's not rooted in anything historical. I thought that the character of the mother was very inconsistent from beginning to end. I really hated this book, and I hate how much people hype it up because it's a lie. This book is really not good. Next. Wuthering Heights. I'm not talking about this book at all. There's a whole ass video on it. Next. This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald, which I'm not sure how famous it is, but I think because The Great Gatsby is so renowned that people assume F. Scott Fitzgerald, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Truth is, this book is trash. I read the first, I don't know, like 10% of it. Trash. Awful. I was making this for a video and it completely derailed the video. That's how bad this book was. Writing trash. Terrible. Weird. Let's do The Prince of Tides by Pat Conroy. I think the only reason I finished this book is nearly 700 pages. It's because I brought it on a trip and I had absolutely nothing else to read. High expectations for this book, they did not pan out. It is not the worst of these books. This is probably one of the least offensive books to me in this video. I thought the writing was okay at points, but then it gets like weirdly Oedipal with, I don't remember if it's the main character, I've repressed a lot. I don't remember if it's the main character's relationship with the therapist, but weird stuff goes on. And then by the ending scene is crazy, or whatever happens at the end. I was like, what am I doing here? I'm really not a fan of an Oedipal or Electra theme in a book. It's very unsettling. It's like, are you being for real? What's the bit? Why do you want to do your mother? Really didn't like this book. I'm never reading another Pat Conroy book. It was bad. It was not good. I think there was more to this book that aggravated me, but I've repressed it. I just look at these books and there's a feeling in my gut of turmoil, of hate. Next book, probably the most offensive book on this list, the worst. I have actually probably definitely the worst. I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. A terrible, 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 worthless book. Jennifer Egan blurbs the back, which is crazy. Stop lying, Jennifer. So does Andrew Sean Greer. What a lie. Sorry to keep editorializing, but I was thinking about this when I was filming the video, but my hatred for this book was so overwhelming that as soon as I looked at the cover, I completely forgot. But the New Yorker has a review of this book, and it is such complete BS that after reading that, I've never read another New Yorker article ever. Stop lying. Stop lying, New Yorker. I don't trust you. I will never trust you again. Listen, read the book and read the New Yorker article and you'll know. You will know what liars they are. That is not how you build readership. You gotta be honest. You gotta be honest. It was a glowing review. It made me feel schizophrenic, like genuinely, like I'd read a different book. It was crazy. It was really crazy. You have to read the New Yorker article if you've read this book and didn't like it. It'll drive you insane. It is terrible. This is progressive in all the wrong ways. It's just virtue signaling, and it's a terrible story. This is also featured prominently in my video, Dark Academia Books Suck, or something like that, something to that effect. Terrible writing, terrible storytelling, terrible themes, terrible takeaways, unbearable. I hated this book. Next up is, and I don't think many people read this book, but for the sake of including classics, that classics are trash. This is a Barnes & Noble Classics Edition. Mole Flanders by Daniel Defoe is a terrible book. It is featured similarly in my video, Reading Like a Prostitute. Check it out if you want. This book is terrible. Terrible. And I don't just mean personal aversion. I try and be clear when I think there's a flaw in a book and when it wasn't personally for me, but I think it had merit. Most of these books I thought were flawed, in addition to not being for me. Lord have mercy. Ninth House, terrible. Weird. A little girl gets raped by a ghost in this book. Why did you think that was a good idea? Why did you think that was a good idea? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you, Leigh Bardugo? What? It was terrible. Weird. Plot was weird to follow, meandering, nothing really happens. It's basically plotless. And then there's a Shazam Deus Machina moment at the end that is, it's like, oh, cool. Cringy, weird, terrible. Another fan favorite, The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is in a video that is now privated, I think. But I thought that it was ostentatiously simple, and it really annoyed me. I didn't buy it. This book made me spiritually obese for a month after reading it. It was really not good. I thought he was trying to be smart. It wasn't genuine, and I didn't like the story. I've read, 2, 3 Cormac McCarthy books. I think just 2. He's done for me. I think there are much better books that explore these themes. This book also, for absolutely no reason, gets like weirdly graphic, which is equal parts awesome. And why are you doing this, Cormac McCarthy? What is wrong with you? Next book is also beloved. I don't know, but I read this book for a book club. Everyone loved it. I hated it. That is Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. I hated this book. I thought the guy, much like Crying in H Mart, death does not a good book make. Real life death. This is a non-fiction book. Just because you die doesn't make your story remarkable, doesn't make you a saint, doesn't make a book worthwhile. I thought the guy who died in this was a brat. He treated his parents like trash, and I also hated the book. I didn't like the structure. I didn't like that the narrator, that the author, inserted his own chapters from what I remember into the book about his experience with the outdoors and climbing. It was like, what? What was the point of this? Hated this book. Hated this book. I have a lot of sympathy for the kid who died's parents, but it was unbearable. I hated everyone involved. The author, basically, and the subject of the biography-ish book. Terrible book. Next up is Commonwealth by Ann Patchett. After reading The Dutch House, I bought, I think, pretty much every single one of Ann Patchett's books. And I was like, she's ride or die. I was ready to read every single book. And I picked this one up, and it was terrible. It was so weird. It was offensive. There's a point in the book where she says that a woman was wearing too much makeup and was too thin. And I was like, who the hell are you to talk? Who are you to put down a sexy broad? Who are you? It's that particular brand of feminism that is rooted in putting other women down, and that's really, really disgusting. I'm a misogynist myself, but I don't like when women are. That really pissed me off. And then there's also some like weird Oedipal stuff. Again, I don't know what it is about baby boomers or Gen X or millennials or whoever the hell she and Pat Conroy are that are so obsessed with their parents. Terrible book. So disappointing. Didn't finish this book. Not going to. After this, I pulled pretty much all of Ann Patchett's books from my shelves. I'm not reading them. She's done for. And it really made me question my love for The Dutch House, which upset me a lot because I remember reading that book and absolutely loving it. Absolutely loving it. One of my favorite books ever. Like, I have some questions for you. I read her book, The Great Believers, first, and I thought it was wonderful. Had its flaws, but I thought it was great. And then I read a second book by the author, and I was so bamboozled that it taints my experience with the first one, and that really makes me depressed. A terrible book. Oh my god. Lord of the Flies. I hated this book. I thought it was boring. And also, like, why would you just read The Hunger Games? Like, this book is not, it's not good. It's not good. I don't really have anything to say other than Piggy is awesome. But I hated the book. Next up, this pissed a lot of people off when I made a video about it, Dracula. I thought the beginning part was eerie, and then it derails. There was a whole video on this book if you want more thoughts. A terrible book. Classics suck. Getting down to the last few books, we're gonna do Stephen King's Misery. I felt like the author, Paul, in this book. I felt trapped in a completely unpleasant way. I was so ready to be done with this book. From what I remember, there is some weird likening of writing to masturbating. And what are you doing, Mr. King? What are you doing? What are you doing? Not good. I didn't enjoy this book. And that's all I have to say on Stephen King. I would give him another chance, though. I don't like when people are perverted for absolutely no damn reason. I like purposeful perversion. I don't like just throwing it in there, seeing what happens. Maybe I'm just a prude at heart. I don't know which one to do. We'll start with Wrong Place, Wrong Time. I think this was for a book club. I hated it. If anyone's read it, it was terrible. Completely illogical. So many flaws in the storytelling. Terribly written. But that's besides the point when you're reading just a fun little pick. This book was genuinely terrible. Genuinely terrible. Nothing added up. So stupid. Last on this list is John Green's An Abundance of Katherines. Yeah, plural. That's the whole point of the book. I read this book because years ago someone told me it was their favorite book. This guy said it was his favorite book. I said, I'll give it a read. I love reading my friends' favorite books. I think it's a good way of a Walmart psychoanalysis, just seeing what's up. So I picked this book up and it was terrible. I was like, what is wrong with you? I don't think I ever talked to him. Maybe years later, a year or two later, I was like, what is wrong with you? But it was terrible. This is the only John Green book I've ever read. Did I say that? I'm not inclined to pick up the rest of them. I think I missed that boat. That's gonna just about do it for today's video. Leave a dislike, don't comment, don't subscribe, and I'll probably never see you again.